The women's suffrage movement was a movement that challenged sexual discrimination in order to gain full legal, economic, vocational, educational, and social rights for opportunities for women equal to those of men. The women's suffrage movement counteracted those social norms by challenging the negative effects that they had on women, uplifting the role of women of color in society, and diminishing people with an anti-suffrage beliefs. Women were motivated to expose their beliefs and opinions on equality. The leaders of the movement held marches, riots, and speakeasies to get society involved in the movement. Their main goal in doing these contributions were to continue raising awareness. People started involving the women's rights movement into music and poetry in order to connect with the cultural side of society. Society started to make publications such as posters, newspapers, and many more that helped men realize that women mattered in society. The women could be put in good use to help children become strong and educated men that society wants them to be. This movement affected women of color like Ida B. Wells. She organized a club called Alpha Suffrage Club for black women in Chicago and recruited women to participate in the suffrage parade in 1913 in Washington, D.C. Wells didn't only convince people to support her campaign, but she was interested in having white women march with her in Washington. She portrayed bravery when she emerged from the parade in Illinois to join the white Illinois delegation in order to prove she would not comply with the segregation. In 1851, two activist leaders, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, commenced an association to raise women's rights awareness. Stanton's position was to promote the issue and describe the goal for women in society, while Anthony controlled uniting women who have struggled having their voice heard and become an independent individual. The two women felt the inferiority of women in a man-dominated society, and thus proceeded to recruit women who felt the same motivation to fight for their rights to become as equal as men. Elizabeth Cady Stanton wrote the Declaration of Sentiments that was based on the Declaration of Independence because the Declaration of Independence gave rights to men. So the Declaration of Sentiments describes and explains how and why women should be granted civil rights. Women felt oppressed and inferior because men held most of the power in society and in the household. There were many men who opposed this movement. For example, there existed headquarters for men who were opposed to women's suffrage. Men believed the government would not change the system for women since men were depended on, while women were shut from the world. Not all men opposed the suffrage movement. Those who supported the movement had collaborated with women since the beginning. When creating the Declaration of Sentiments, 32 men, including Frederick Douglass, signed the Declaration of Sentiments during the Seneca Falls Convention. In 1910, men who voted themselves began forming Men's League for Women's Suffrage, and by 1912, the National Men's League had 20,000 members. One of the greatest outcomes that came from the women's rights movement was the 19th Amendment that gave women the right to vote. Women were finally set free to live independently and provide for themselves as much as men were equal to them.